officer who has survived multiple surgeries and suicide attempt. She's had a very, very powerful journey. So we're gonna talk a little bit about it. Here's her bio. She's a certified wellness practitioner, personal trainer, and nutrition coach dedicated to empowering women to achieve their fullest potential. She's the author of the Amazon bestseller, Sexy Senior Citizen. It's not what y'all think it is. You gotta Google it.
I know that's right.
How to stay sleek, sexy, and strong at your age, which has inspired countless women to embrace health and wellness at any stage of life. Delcina loves to educate, entertain, and motivate through her own podcast and social media channels. Since going through multiple joint replacements and having to recover, she relates to the struggles many have with getting their health and fitness back. Public speaking gives her the opportunity to get in front of those who are ready and willing to make an intentional change to a healthier life. She's married to Stephen West for over 35 years and has 2 adult children, 35 and 31. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Delcina West. Not gentlemen, just ladies. Where's your mic? All right, you got it? Okay. It's yes. All right. How you feeling?
I feel pretty good.
Okay.
Already moved by the first speaker.
Yeah. I'm gonna tell everybody. Can y'all believe she is 63? Yeah. We just had our birthdays. Oh, that's Wendy. Okay. She just turned 60 years old. Can y'all believe it? Stand up and let the people. Aging well. That's aging very well. All right. Look at her arms. Them arms. Yes, ma'am. Delcina, you have such a powerful journey. One that you really haven't talked about a lot. And so thank you for being here, number one. You are a bodybuilder. We can see that you're fit, but it hasn't always been that way for you. Talk to me about your journey to wellness.
Yes, I was a bodybuilder.
Oh, the mic a little.
Oh, yes, I was a bodybuilder for about 15 years, in my 30s and 40s, and sort of took it for granted that I was always going to be very strong, very fit, and very engaged in physical fitness. But in my background, my family suffers from arthritis, but an advanced stage of arthritis. And I just never really thought about it. And it finally hit me one day as I was having some pain in my hip. I was having difficulty going up the stairs, getting off the toilet, and it was just nagging. And I went to see my doctor, and as we did a series of x-rays and MRIs and additional blood tests and stuff. But I was on my way to vacation in Florida to see my grandmother. My grandmother is my best friend. She passed away a couple of years ago. And at the time, she was 97 years old, living at home by herself. And we would hang out and go shopping to Walmart, her favorite place. And so, preparing to go to the trip, I went and got my test done, prepared to go to Florida and hang out for a little while. While I got to Florida, just a couple of days later, my doctor called me. Now, your doctors, they barely have time to see you in the hospital, right? Mm-hmm. But when they call you, there's something serious going on. So my doctor called me and he said, can you get back to the hospital soon? I said, why? What's going on? And he said after he looked at my x-rays with some other doctors, they noticed that I was suffering from avascular necrosis. And what that was basically was my bones in my hip joint were dying. They were deteriorating to a point of no return. And so he said, if I don't do something about it soon, I would end up in a wheelchair. And I thought, that's not possible, not for me. So I came back right after my vacation, saw the doctor, and he realized that yes, they took a deeper look. It definitely was avascular necrosis. It's, if you look it up, I went and started looking it up, but it happens silently for years, and then once it shows up, it's serious. So I went ahead and had a complete hip replacement, and I was just turning 50, and I thought, how am I just 50 and I'm getting a hip replacement? I'm thinking, that's for old people. That just couldn't happen to me. But then that started the cascade of different surgeries. Right after I had the hip replacement, the next year I started having troubles with my knee. I went to physical therapy, I had all the preventative things, and the doctor said, you basically have advanced arthritis in your knees, you have no cartilage, you need to get knee replacement, we need to do 2 knees. I said, I can't do 2 knees, I gotta be able to walk around, so we did 1 knee. 6 months later, I couldn't use my arm. I had, went in, I did all the previous things, because I was getting out of the military, you have to go to physical therapy, you have to have pain management, injections in your joints and all that. But the disease had progressed too fast, so I had to have a shoulder replacement, complete shoulder replacement. After that, I started having pain in my neck. Well, I was having pain in my neck for decades before that. But like everything else, you think it's just stress, it's just issues, it's just pain. But I suffered with that pain for a long, long time, underneath all the other pains. And to the point where I was getting Valium to take for the pain twice a day while still having to do work. But it got to the point one day when I was outside and I couldn't even salute my officers because I couldn't lift my hand. I couldn't comb my hair, I couldn't brush my teeth with my right arm. Everything just went numb. And finally, when I just couldn't even hold a cup of coffee, I decided to finally go do advanced things. And so I went through pain management where they took a needle this long and they would have to inject it in my neck while I'm still awake to make sure they don't touch your spine in order to paralyze it. And I had to do that every 3 months. And even after that, the pain was still continuing to the point where they decided I was gonna have to have a cervical spine fusion and replacement. At the time, it was a 50-50. We can do it, it'll turn out well, but if it doesn't, and we touch something wrong, you'll be paralyzed. So I had to have surgery in my spine and fusion in my disc. All these surgeries happened within 5 years time frame. And after every single one, I was devastated because I'm still young in my mind. And my whole life idea of strength and fitness was totally obliterated. I went from wearing my high heel shoes and hopping around to using a cane and a walker, and I started getting depressed, and I couldn't do the things that I wanted to do. I looked at myself in the mirror, I couldn't recognize myself, and I just kept feeling like I was just useless. What good am I? Going through all these things. How could I say I'm a fitness expert? I stopped talking about nutrition, I stopped talking about exercise. I just felt like a failure and a fraud somehow, like it was my fault, But then, one day after one of the surgeries, I don't remember which one it was, it was right before I was supposed to have it, I think it was my knee surgery, right before I was supposed to have my knee surgery, I said, Lord, why am I going through all of this? Why is my body just breaking down like this on me? I can't understand it. And I went into my closet and I just cried and cried and cried and cried and cried and cried and I just sobbed. And after I cried and sobbed about it and prayed, I said, well, you know what, Lord? Maybe I can use these experiences to help other women. Yeah. Maybe I can use these experiences to recover and use the knowledge that you allow me to have for other women, to help them. So then I started getting motivated. I said, well, if I can't use my leg, what other part of my body can I use? Well, I can use the other leg. If I can't use this arm, what other part of my body can I use? I can use this arm.
Mm-hmm.
And if I can't get out of bed, what else can I do? I can sit up. So I just started thinking about not what I couldn't do,
But
but
what you
what
could
I
do.
could do.
And before we get to your healing, go ahead and clap that foot. Before we get to your healing, I know that was some really, really tough times in your life. And I think I met you right after those tough times because you were still on a cane when I met you. But that wasn't the first time that you had been through some really low moments in life that took your breath away. And I know all of those surgeries like affected your marriage, your relationships. But you've had some other low moments in your life that took your breath away, that have left you asking God, what is going on? And so talk to me also, Delsina, about, so we know that, this is your health journey, but you also, your physical health journey, but you also had a mental health journey that took your breath away. Can you talk to us about that as well?
Yeah. So that was around 2012. And at the time, my marriage was not much of a marriage. It was like living with roommates. We all sometimes go through that. My son was angry at us because we had paid for him to go to school for 3 years as an A student, and found out that he had just been drinking and using drugs and failing classes. So we decided to, stop funding his school. I was an officer in the Army, was in a very, very stressful job. I was still taking medication for my pain, so I was always in this fogginess. And in that year, April 12, 2012, we had an incident with an active shooter on Fort Hood. And so this shooter came through our building, where headquarters, we were having a meeting, and I was talking to a friend of mine, Sergeant Lazani.
And this was your unit?
This is my unit, yeah, this was my unit. And we were just talking about taking time to do things and go and spend time. And, I used to go to Austin all the time, and I told him, take time to go and have some fun. Life is short, I'm just saying that hypothetically. And he was like, well, I'm gonna retire soon, I'll have plenty of time to do things. We left the conversation, I went back to the meeting, and just as we sat down for the meeting, we heard gunfire in the building. And as we heard the gunfire coming closer, because the shooter had gotten all the way, he was firing off rounds, killed a couple of people. We blockaded the door, and we escaped. Later on, I learned that it was my friend was the first person that got shot. And as an officer, I couldn't do anything. My unit, my soldiers were scared. They were crying. They wanted counseling. My commanding officer seemed to be cold and uncaring. And I was just distraught. I was frustrated. I went home a couple of days later, and I was so just done with carrying the load of trying to keep my marriage together, dealing with my son who was angry with us. He had just become homosexual, dealing with my other younger son who was in a tumultuous marriage, taking care of the family, the bills, and everything. I just wanted to disappear. Mm-hmm. I wanted the world to just suck me in and to just go away. And I thought, nobody would miss me. I'm just annoying. I'm a perfectionist. I annoy everybody. If I'm gone, who would care? So I decided to take a bath, and in the bathtub, my husband had left his razor. That was when, you take out the little razor and replace it. And he left it on the thing, and I was thinking, you know what? If I just picked that razor up and just slit my arm, I could just go to sleep peacefully and just never wake up to any of this. So I picked up the razor blade, and I was determining which way to slit my wrists. I really just wanted peace. And in an instant, my youngest son flashed in my mind. And I was promising to do a reception for him if he stayed married for a year. I was bargaining with him. And I thought he would be devastated if I wasn't around. And that instant, it flashed in my mind, and I dropped the razor blade. And I got out the tub, laid on the bed, wouldn't let the air blow on me, and I admitted myself into the psych ward.
Delsina, thank you so much for sharing your story with us. And I know all of that took your breath away.
Yes.
Thank you so much for sharing. We're going to talk about your healing when you come back to the set. Thank you.
Thank you.